Your discretion is advised.
They've set up all sorts of impressive cameras, microphones and sensors around the house.
Stephen had to come into me a couple of times. He was that scared.
He needs me to guide him to the spirit world where he can find peace.
It's unmistakable.
Truth for the life. No one shall come to the Father except through me. There stands a whore of Satan. The Antichrist is here.
You are not going to want to avert your eyes for even a second.
People say if there were black footprints beside your bed, it means he'd been there.
We need the police. Bring the army in.
A man was found in Montgomery Street in Belfast city centre. The scene is still cordoned off.
Dominic, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thanks so much for hanging out and talking to us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you know, I'm always excited to discover a new Halloween movie. It's my favorite subgenre, no surprise, and that's what you've given us with Haunted Ulster Live, and so I'm looking forward to discussing that with you. And but before we get to your filmmaking, every day is Halloween, and so we always like to start off, whenever possible, talking a little bit about the Halloween holiday itself, and I always just love learning what it means to you, and I'm especially curious, you know, growing up in Ireland, away from our weirdness here in the States, where we always hear about, you know, that's where Halloween and so much of this began. So can you talk to us just a little bit about what Halloween means to you, the holiday? Is it a big deal for you? Do you have memories and fun memories growing up? What can you tell us about?
Yeah, so I really like Halloween. I have two young kids, which makes it even better, and they're like 4 and 6, so they're totally into it. But the Halloween that we have in Ireland now is very like the American Halloween, which I'm totally happy with, because I think the American Halloween is one of the best things America's done for us, to be honest. I think it's fantastic because it's dressing up, it's going out, it's having fun, it's people meeting their neighbours, it's very community orientated, and there's no big expense for parents. You don't need to buy gifts and all that kind of stuff. I think it's great. Obviously it has its roots in Ireland, but that kind of version of things is definitely more American. But when I was a kid, it was a little bit different because I grew up in Belfast in the 80s and the 90s when the troubles were happening. So there was a little at dark in the winter and the autumn time, you wouldn't really have gone out and knocked doors of people that you didn't know. Not really, you know.
Yeah.
Some people you might have done, depending on where you lived, but where I lived, you wouldn't really do that. So it was a little bit different.
Mhm.
But that also added to the fun of it because it was, you know, it was the time of year when you could go out in a gang and sort of, you know, we used to have things called bangers, which were basically like sticks of dynamite that you would take up the hills and sort of set off and blow things up, you know. And turnips rather than pumpkins were, I don't know, do you call turnips? You know what a turnip is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We didn't have now we have like the big American style pumpkins, but back then it was like this little root vegetable that you would carve out, eat the turnip, and make your jack-o'-lantern in, which look way spookier, because they're kind of, you know, misformed and you don't have the space to come up with an intricate design. You have to just like hack out triangles and you end up with something kind of gnarly and horrific looking. So always liked Halloween for all those reasons. It was kind of a license to go out and cause mischief in the best possible way, you know. And the first night that I saw Halloween, the film Halloween, was Halloween 1992, and it also happens to be the night that Ghost Watch was broadcast on BBC One, which will segue us into Haunted Ulster Live, of course, because there's a little bit of a influence there. But just so happens the night that I saw Ghost Watch, later on that night, I saw Halloween for the first time, and I still, like, I can't. That was like 1992, because you know what it's like before the slasher revival in the 90s. Halloween still had a lot of potency that I suppose you could argue for like Gen Z. It probably would feel a little bit like I've seen this film 1,000 times or ripped off 1,000 times. But back in the early 90s, it still had all its power, you know. So I remember that night. I remember that night also because I had to make my brother stand outside the toilet because I was afraid to go on my own.
Oh,
So
man.
those are the memories to stick with you. Those little associations, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you know, both of those obviously, you know, had big influences on you. That particular night, that Halloween night, both of those viewing experiences, still influencing you now with your feature film. So I love how that all ties in. And you mentioned being a parent and your kids. I'm a parent too, and but those are perfect ages, you know, to
Yeah.
be reliving so many of your best childhood Halloween memories, and that's what I found with my kids was, you know, during those ages, you know, you just get to relive it again, and it's just so awesome again. I always have to ask, what is your favorite Halloween costume that you've worn, and your favorite Halloween candy or treat?
Uh, I've had out my Gandalf costume a couple of times, so it's probably that. And I mean, every man with a beard secretly wants to be a wizard. So on Halloween we get to do that.
I could see that. I can see that.
I've spared dressing up my children as hobbits, but I feel like that's an
It'll happen eventually.
you know, the candy aspect of it over here is probably much more exciting. In the States over here, it tends to be sort of Haribo, like Cadbury's wrapped chocolates and things. I don't have a massive sweet tooth, so I like to have I like to walk around trick or treating with the kids. I tend to have a sneaky little craft beer with me. You know, that's my little Halloween treat.
Hey, that works. Yeah. That's
trick or treating for adults.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, never too old to trick or treat, and yeah, treats for everybody. And I love everything you said about, you know, it being about the community and everything, because we feel the same way. So moving into filmmaking, I mean, this is your first feature film. Have you always wanted to make movies, or when did this begin for you?
Probably more into. So I started off in music
Okay.
about 20 years ago, really. I'm writing songs in a band. We were kind of reasonably big in our city, which doesn't really count for much, obviously, in this grand scheme of things. But definitely storytelling was coming out of that. And I'd always wanted to get into film, but never knew how to do it. Just had no clue. It would never have been an option when I was like school age. Things are different in Belfast now because we have much more of a film industry, but there was nothing. But I got into kind of writing stories, always into writing stories and comics and trying to write scripts. Music was involved as well. And then I kind of got seriously into script writing, and just around 5 years ago, I realized that I am going to have to try and direct this stuff, because what the alternative is to sit around trying to get other people to do it, which is tough. It takes a lot of time, and it was a classic kind of like COVID-19 lockdown epiphany.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna make this film. So it's obviously I made short films first, but Haunted Ulster Live it felt like the perfect first feature to make, because so much of the found footage genre lends itself to obviously very low budget, and I mean, which can be a bad thing, of course, because it means that anybody can make a found footage film, which means there's probably thousands of them. But there was just something about the idea that and I have a friend who is also a filmmaker, and he's a co-producer in Haunted Ulster Live with me, and we just sat down and we just kind of thought, you know, we could probably do this. we just need to make sure that it's the best possible script and that we get the best possible people on as well. We'll need people to take it on as sort of like to get the passion project side of it. And that's kind of the way that it went. Thankfully, we got on an amazing crew who kind of had gaps in their schedule, sort of thing. And we spent a lot of time on the script, and we also just happened to have like fantastic actors here. So it was a nice synergy of all those elements. And obviously, like, found footage, one night, one location, no costume changes. All of that lends itself to shooting as quickly as you can. Doesn't mean it's not an absolute nightmare. Of course, it's like very, very scary. But there's no way that you could shoot a normal narrative film in the length of time that we shot this on. You just couldn't, moving the camera, setups, everything takes time, shooting things from 2 or 3 different angles, whereas this had that kind of documentary style feel to it, that we just rehearse, and then do it.
It's unmistakable.
The truth and the life. No one shall come to the Father except through me. There stands a whore of Satan. The Antichrist is here.
You are not going to want to avert your eyes for even a second.
Can you talk a little bit for our audience that hasn't seen the film yet? I've seen it, and I love it. I really enjoyed it. You captured the late 90s feel. It's a late 90s broadcast on Halloween night. But can you tell our audience a little bit about what the film is about?
Yeah. So Ghostwatch is a good frame of reference. If any, I feel like Ghostwatch is finally getting the popularity that it deserves. It probably was a bit more of a cult film than it is now. It's pretty much a similar premise to Ghostwatch in that it's a live broadcast from a haunted house on Halloween night. Rather than being in England, it's in Belfast in Northern Ireland in the late 90s. So you've got this nice kind of transition from analog to digital times. You've got the older presenter who's a bit more of a kind of like long in the tooth broadcasting legend, and then you have the younger presenter who's like the next generation. We do a lot of I love ghost hunting TV shows. I absolutely love them. I don't necessarily watch them thinking that everything's happening is completely real, but I love the culture of it. I love the characters that they attract, and all of these people who like are into parapsychology and all that stuff. So it's kind of it explores those kinds of people and what would actually happen if there was like a ghost, a poltergeist in a normal family home. And at the same time, you've got the context of Belfast in the 90s, which is not necessarily like we don't throw it in the audience's face. It's just sort of it's in the water a little bit. You can just kind of feel there's a little bit of tension. The whole broadcast is in and outside the house, and when we go to a commercial break, we stay in the house for the most part. So you get to see behind the scenes, which was our way of seeing more of the characters, because if you only ever see the broadcast side of a character, you don't really get a clear idea of everything that's going on. It has, I suppose, a few surprises in it, which we were happy with, and that's where it diverges massively from something like Ghostwatch. Like, hopefully people who have seen it, they get that it kind of becomes its own thing. It's pretty high concept, which is definitely I've always been told, lower your budget, higher your concept, and we kind of really ran with that, and we decided to go pretty nuts with it. It's played. It debuted in Fright Fest in London in 2023, last August. We've had a good festival run. We're playing Panic Fest next month. Unnamed Footage Festival in San Francisco is our US theatrical premiere.
Nice.
When people will get to see it in the States and Canada, hopefully, touch wood, from June, because we've got looks like we've got a distributor for the US and Canada, so we're in negotiation. But so I'll not say who it is, but it's looking pretty good that it'll be the summertime when people will actually get to see it.
Very cool. Yeah, that's great news to hear. And of course we'll keep our audience updated on that and when they can check it out, and they should attend those festivals if they can. And I know it did get great reviews out of the screenings it's already had.
Yeah, it has, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
This is something I didn't realize, because obviously short films don't really get reviews. It's different sort of like culture. But only when we had our Fright Fest premiere, and a lot obviously reviews, you know that it's going to be reviewed, but they're all embargoed. I just realized I have no idea if this is going to get good reviews or not. And you think it doesn't matter to you, but it sort of does, because you know that so much hinges on that. And thankfully, some people really get it. They really get it, and they're treating it, and they're picking stuff out of it that is kind of under the surface a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will just watch it as a found footage haunted house film, and that's fine.
Yeah.
If they enjoy it that way, that's brilliant. And they might not enjoy it that way, which is they might hate it, which is also fine, because that's life. But there's other people who are really, really, really getting good stuff out of it, and that's very gratifying, when you've put everything into it that you have.
Yeah, and we like movies, I do anyway, that do work on a couple different levels. And like you said, you can take it on a surface level, and it's fun and great like that. But yeah, when you've got a few other things happening at the same time, that I think that just adds to it. And then the rewatchability too. Once you get through all the twists and turns, you're like, oh, let me go back and see little hints of things or other things that you might have missed in the first viewing, knowing where it all goes. And it sounds like you were very involved with the development of this film pretty early on. Was Halloween, the Halloween setting, always a part of it, or at what point did you guys realize it should be set on Halloween, or was that always part of it?
Always a part of it, because it's like as soon as I just so UTV is the station that it's based on. It's like a regional Northern Ireland TV station, and I immediately, when I just thought UTV Ghost Watch, it just made me laugh. It's just there's so much mileage out of that, because it's probably similar to like public access TV in America. It's that kind of community TV where everything's a little bit more low budget. You're more likely to get things going wrong or whatever. So I just knew there'd be so much mileage out of all of that, and it's kind of like it's cheesy to say it, but it's sort of like a love letter to that kind of TV and that kind of period, because even though that's only 25 years ago, it looks like it's 50 years ago. Like it's when you watch that old stuff now, like the world was so different, broadcast style was so different, people looked so different as well, and I just knew that if we got the production design elements right of it, we could kind of capture that. Finding the house was the key, and when we found the house, it was like a sign, because we found the perfect house, inside and outside. Everything about it was just exactly what we wanted, and we kind of took that as the sign, because you could shoot the film on a phone with your mates and have a film, but without the location being right, it just doesn't work.
Definitely. And I was thinking about it, with you mentioned some of the challenges of it being the first feature film. How long did the shoot last? I mean, it was probably a pretty quick shoot, I imagine.
I'd say in total we had, so full days with full crew would be 6 days, and then we had about 4 half days with like a slimmed down crew. So you could call that probably like 7 full days or something. that means you're shooting about like between 10 and 15 pages of a script a day, which is a lot. And a lot of indie films would shoot maybe 5 at the most. But obviously, this is the good thing about found footage. You're shooting every scene from one camera, and if the actors are rehearsed and the camera operator is DPs rehearsed and everybody's ready, that's how you do that. You do it with great actors and great crew. You could not get your mates together and make a film in 7 days and come out with something that like worked and looked the part, you know. Not saying that it's perfect, obviously it's not. And I, you know, anybody watching it will see, like, hopefully, you know, they'll might see a few little compromises or whatever, but I feel like the spirit of it and the performances kind of get it past that, you know, because we have that. A lot of our favorite films will have the odd dodgy special effect or something, you know.
It is crazy watching it, how, you know, vintage it looks now. You're right, because I don't think of the late 90s as that long ago, but you're right. I mean, you watch stuff from that era and it does look like that, especially like you said, you know, public broadcasts like that. And I was also thinking, as you're talking about the shooting and it being so condensed, I imagine, was there a lot of rehearsal to get it? Because so much of it seems unbroken at times. I mean, did you have to set a lot of this up ahead of time, I imagine?
We had 2 days, I think 2 full days rehearsal with the cast, and one of those days was with Conor Losty, the DP, with the camera, because the camera's a character in the film as well. The camera is a character in the film, but the cast just worked really, really hard. They just worked really hard, and a lot of them knew each other from the theatre, TV, film scene in Belfast, in Ireland. So you get that. That's when people know each other. It's great. You know, they've got their own kind of chemistry and they've got their own way of working with each other. Yeah, all of those elements just came together. You could always rehearse more, but there's a certain thing about rehearsal where you get to a certain point and then you just want to do it, you know, because you also want to capture that raw energy. The one thing we had going for us, which applies to a lot of films like this, is it's a live broadcast. If somebody fluffs a line, if somebody looks at the camera, if an extra looks at the camera and waves, you know, in the way that they would get immediately sacked if they did that in a normal film, that all works because it's a live broadcast. So you can use that. So if there were moments where people like did something they shouldn't have, or they dropped something or whatever, it could absolutely be part of the TV show. So you're kind of making those decisions along the way. There wasn't anything major like that, to be honest. But it just means you've got these little fail-safes built into the concept. There's another comparison. I always forget the name, WNUF Halloween special. It was another Ghost Watch style film made about 2012-13, I would say, in America. It's like I think it's like a Midwest kind of public access TV show.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yep.
Yeah, and I think they made that for like nothing.
Yeah.
I think they got in like one name guy and he got paid. But that people love that film because I think they actually shot it on VHS, which is a very brave thing to do. And obviously that, you know, it gives it a certain character, you know, but it's good fun.
Well, I think there's definitely similarities, and I think it does hit that kind of vintage retro sweet spot that a lot of us have. You know, nostalgia is very strong. And we all have that you know, if you were watching that type stuff, which a lot of us horror fans were at during those times, you know, you had that nostalgia when you watch these films, and it kind of brings you back to that time.
And you're like 1998, the end of the millennium. You are at a real transition from analog to digital. Like it's only a few years away where suddenly everybody's where you've got HD TV and people are.
That's right.
VHS is on the way out. Even cassettes are on the way out. A broadcasting style change, and then like with you just think about how quickly the internet like changed the way that we watch TV and where and when and how things are broadcast, and how TV tried to integrate the internet, but and that would never really work. But that's all kind of in there, and also it's just transition years for Northern Ireland because it was kind of the end, inverted commas, like the end of the Troubles here. And there's been a lot of that in the news, which we were feeding off because it was kind of 25 years since then last year. So yeah, there is something, and it's also when I was like 18 in 1998. So you never forget when you were 18 because it's one of the most exciting things in the world is being able to legally do all the things that you weren't allowed to do before that. So yeah, so it's tied up, and I do feel like there's a certain audience who we've had 80s nostalgia for a long time. Like feels like we've had 80s nostalgia for well over 20 years, even longer than that actually.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a reason for that. It's because artistically, film-wise, music-wise, it definitely represents some sort of kind of cultural high point. You could easily argue that. But I think people are probably ready for kind of new nostalgia.
Sure.
Yeah. And I suppose if we haven't got it already, no, but we've kind of got like 90s slasher revival, like the Totally Killer. I saw one, I thought the name was just terrible. What was it? It's a Wonderful Knife.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not great, but I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to do like a 90s slasher revival. So we've got a revival of a revival now,
Yeah, and I've got a sweet spot for the 90s. And like you said, it is a bit of a time capsule. It's like our kids, watching TV like that, our kids don't even they're looking at it like what is going on? This is so old school, and so they have no reference point. So it is a time capsule in that way. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say, but you have a character, Blackfoot Jack, in the film, and I'm curious, how much of that and just how much of the mythology and stuff you drew from actual existing folklore, and how much you guys created for the film.
Yeah, so I think that Blackfoot Jack is what the child calls the ghost in the film, and the idea is that if you wake up and there's black footprints beside your bed, it means that Blackfoot Jack was there in the night, and historically he snatches children away. And one of the characters in the film supposes that he might be based on some kind of pagan demon, and that he's a version of somebody who's existed in different folklore. And I've always loved films and TV that like use pagan folklore elements and bring them into the present in some way, because why not? And even like one of the characters like in the film has a website where he puts all his theories, and I love I have a real nostalgia for like Yahoo GeoCities websites, which were like a lot of conspiracy theory stuff, but it's when conspiracy theories were kind of harmless. It was, UFOs and ghosts and Nostradamus and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
So it's not, Blackfoot Jack is based on a few different things. There is an English demon called Spring-Heeled Jack, and I think that's probably where the Jack part of it came from, where his feet would appear like leaping across like English moors, and they would find his footprints like miles and miles apart, as if he was just like flying through the night, you know. And there's some brilliant sort of like ink sketches of them. So a lot of that different stuff was in there. I also brought in stone circles, which are again are very popular at the minute. You know, everybody loves their folk horror. But obviously we have a lot of stone circles. Like, very, you know, Belfast is surrounded by countryside, and you don't have to go very far to find random stones that you could kind of suppose that something happened at. Nobody really knows. You know, they're still sort of shrouded in a lot of mystery. So it's very close to it's very close to us. The stone circle trope is kind of like our Indian burial ground, you know. It's like, you know, if you need something weird to happen, you know, there's a stone circle, you know, the same way that, you know, Stephen King will have it, or there's an Indian burial ground nearby, you know. But it's good to draw from all that stuff because it gives it all a real sense of place. And I feel like I've watched it with audiences in England, and we had our Irish premiere in Belfast, which was scary because home audience. But people really liked all that stuff because I think we don't lay it on too heavily. It's kind of and I'm always interested to hear what Americans think of the accents and everything, because we didn't compromise. Like, you know, it's sort of it's hopefully quite a sort of like authentic portrayal of people in Belfast, you know.
I loved it. I mean, that was one of my favorite things, is that it is, you know, another culture, another place, another time that, you know, I'm not familiar with, and I don't see that often on film, you know, not often enough. And it's Halloween night, and so, you know, that's just always the icing on top for me. And we've talked about some of the challenges, and this being your first feature film, I'm curious, what was your favorite memory from the set?
Good question. There was a day about 4 days in, we were shooting like a practical effect. Not really a practical effect, but we had a smoke machine going. We had some nice lighting going, and we were all, I think we were all like, for whatever reason, we had a little bit more time for this shot than we wanted, and the sound, the boom operator, and the like extras coordinator and the script supervisor were like, we were all kind of making suggestions. This is something that would never really happen on a film set. You know, everybody stays in their lane because that's how you make the film. But we were all just really relaxed, and everybody was really enjoying it. And somebody said, the script supervisor said to me, "Well, this is what you think making films is like before you start making films," because it just felt like we were like just like living in a house for a week making our little poltergeist film. And yeah, that made me really happy, because you want the crew to be happy.
Yeah.
Because they're making big sacrifices, and they're all like really working hard, and you want everybody to be pulled in the same direction. Now, don't get me wrong, a couple of days after that we had we had like a storm which knocked over like part of our like outdoor set, and it was classic, like, you know, lose 10 hours. But that was on the last day. But that's inevitable. There's always going to be something that goes wrong. It's how you deal with it. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Well, that does sound like a perfect memory, like you said. And I love that quote, you know, that this is the way you think making films is going to be before you really get into it. And that you actually, it was a little bit of that, at least for a time there, and that being your first feature out. So what's next on the horizon? I mean, you're bringing this obviously to the States, it sounds like. You got these screenings coming up. You got the distribution deal that we'll look forward to hearing about soon. beyond all of that, what does the future hold?
Well, it's opened a few doors for us with some partners like in production and distribution, and people are interested in what we have next, and we have a couple of ideas, and the next film hopefully will be not quite found footage, but sort of a full documentary science fiction film, also set in the 90s, completely unrelated to Haunted Ulster Live, but it is hard. It's hard to give you the whole pitch, but it's really set in the 90s. It's set in Belfast, and UFOs are involved, and anyone we've pitched it to is really into it, which is great. So we're developing the script at the minute and getting some partners on board, hopefully, and touch wood, I think that's the next feature that we're going to make, hopefully in the near future. I'll not put a date on it, but Haunted Ulster Live has definitely helped get a little bit of attention, because you know how it is, like, when you haven't made a film, it's hard to get people on board, but then when you have, and if they also happen to like it, even better, then they sort of want to know what you're doing next, you know.
Well, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and as you've touched on, I mean, there's so many found footage films out there, and you approach it and you're like, well, how's somebody going to do something fresh with this? And I think a lot of what you've talked about goes a long way. Just those little touches, and like you mentioned, having a top-notch cast, you know, because they're going to have to carry so much of it, and then letting the camera be a character, you know, which is important too, and then the setting and having all of that right. So I thought all of that was really effective. So I think audiences are going to enjoy it. You know, especially Halloween horror loving audiences like our friends here.
Hopefully a nice soft launch in the summertime, and then come Halloween time, we'll be banging the drum, you know. The other fun thing is Late Night with the Devil is just released, and
that's right.
Also like a live studio broadcast on Halloween night. But I got to see it a few weeks ago. That's great fun.
Man.
Great fun. But it's great for us because we'll try to piggyback on that.
Oh sure, yeah.
Further down the line, you know. But it's Late Night. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't yet. I can't wait to see it. It opens here this Friday actually, and I can't wait to see it. I've heard nothing but great things about it, and I was thinking about that too, watching your film. I was like, there are, you know, some obvious similarities. You know, it's different decades, but you know, some obvious similarities there.
There definitely is a little bit of similarity, surface level, but they have really nailed that 70s TV chat show look. Like, it looks fantastic. And what do you call the actor? I'm always pronouncing his name
the
wrong.
lead actor, David Desmawson.
Thank you. It's seeing him get a lead. Like, he's great in it, but he's such a brilliant character actor, and he's the kind of guy, you know, you see him in so many things, and you're like, yes, he's great. So to see him getting a lead in a film like that, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I've seen him in a ton of things, like you say, and he's always great in those smaller roles. So to cast him as the lead, and just the trailers and the clips I have seen, it looks like they nailed the 70s aesthetic, like you're talking about. So that's pretty good review coming from you to that. I love that. That's awesome. And yeah, I think, like you said, once it gets distribution, if it's summer, and then by fall, you know, people will really be probably discovering it and finding it then, and it'll probably be making many people's fall, October, Halloween rotation of their viewing.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. A lot of films, you don't see them for a year or two. Like it's just the way it is at the minute. And I like the idea of a slow burn where people just kind of find it.
Yeah.
Like Lake Mungo is one of my found footage films, and I did not see it for years and years. Just heard people talking about it, and that film was like 2007 or 2008 or something. So happy for people to sort of discover us, but hopefully in time for Halloween.
Absolutely. Well, like again, I recommend it. I know our audience is going to be looking forward to checking it out, and we at Halloween Daily News will be sharing the news whenever there is distribution info. But for now, are you going to be coming over here for any of those screenings? Are you going to be visiting the States?
Not for these screenings though, but hopefully in the future, yeah.
Very cool. Excellent. You'll have to experience a little bit of Halloween over here at some point, and then we can talk again, and you can compare cultures.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been great. Just getting to know you and talking about this movie. And again, I appreciate you taking the time and hanging out, and I look forward to what's next from you. I'll definitely be following your career moving forward, and yeah, I can't wait to for audiences, more people to see Haunted Ulster live.
Cheers. Thank you, Matt. It's been great.
And we always hate to say goodbye, but every day is Halloween anyway, so instead I always just say Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.